Hey everyone, how's it going? Andrew here. Do you like Star Wars? Me too. Or do you hate Star Wars? Also, me too. Within the Star Wars universe, you really do have it all. There's games and media that are absolute classic, legendary gems that will go down in history as perhaps some of the best games media ever created. And there's games that are the most massive, predatory pieces of shit you'd ever conceivably try to find in the realm of video games. Because of the scale of the massive Star Wars IP, the large AAA games always get the most attention, but this video isn't about the top dog $1 million budget game. It's about a game so bizarre it's barely talked about, and it has a history stretching back well over 25 years to a whole different era. A game so mystique, even the most hardcore Star Wars fans doesn't know about it. A game that falls completely outside of Star Wars content control and monetization, and is allowed to do so even by perhaps some of the most evil corporations in existence today. A game I didn't know anything about or had even heard of until an old friend and a fellow streamer told me about it. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Star Wars Combine. You know, usually when I make these kinds of videos, it's me showing a game or a franchise or something that I have a fair bit of knowledge and experience with. This, however, is not the case with Star Wars Combine, so I just want to make it clear I'm still pretty much learning how to play this game, and this video may include factual inaccuracies, so please do correct me when I'm wrong in the comment section down below, and I would really appreciate any likes and dislikes you may give this video. So anyway, what is Star Wars Combine, and why have you most likely not heard of it? Very long story short, Star Wars Combine is a browser-based, real-time, massively multiplayer online simulator game released all the way back in 1998. The game is still being supported by a small, dedicated team and gets frequent updates. In fact, just the other day, Star Wars Combine actually got a Discord bot integration and has a very active Discord server. Games like Star Wars Combine and the games that came in its era typically ends up on people's dead game lists, but Star Wars Combine is far from it. With an active player base of a few thousand players, unlike its peers that died out years ago, Star Wars Combine actually secured crowdfunding to keep its servers online for the next 10 years, and it won't be going away anytime soon. In fact, Star Wars Combine had to stop taking money to fund the game as they were getting too much money, and allegedly there was a clause saying that they were not supposed to make any money from the alleged Star Wars IP owners. Anyway, what is so special about Star Wars Combine? Well, for starters, it is absolutely gigantic. Every dot you see on this map are actual locations you can travel to, and to my knowledge, most of the planet in the Star Wars universe do actually exist in the game. Star Wars factions that you all know and love, like the Mandalorians, the Trade Federation, the Galactic Empire, the Rebel Alliance, and more are actually in this game, being led by real players just like you and me, with wars and events constantly going on between the factions. And while Star Wars Combine is certainly a very complicated game that takes a while to learn, you'll be invited right into a faction upon completing the tutorial. I was personally sent invitations to at least 10 different factions without doing anything at all, and the community here really welcomes and helps new players with open arms. I honestly think you'll have to really struggle to find a more welcoming MMO community than this one. That is at least my experience. Other than that, there is of course a fully functional economic system. There's trade, there's NPCs, and there's pretty much whatever else you can imagine doing in a Star Wars MMO. You see, Star Wars Combine is a game where role-playing is taken extremely seriously and is detailed down to your character, of which you can have only one. As a matter of fact, having multiple accounts leads to them all being immediately banned, and this stuff is taken very seriously. So what do you do as a player? You can join factions, do space mining, go through basic military training with a faction, which takes a little while. You can explore, fight monsters, do bounty hunting using one of those trackers you've seen in Mandalorian, and just about everything else you can imagine doing in a Star Wars MMO. Star Wars Combine is a really unique, massive, and fun game for those that are able to enjoy it for what it is. However, while Star Wars Combine has a lot of things going for it that I personally find to be really cool, 99% of the gamers in the world would probably never play this game. As you probably gathered by the simplistic UI and the graphics, Star Wars Combine isn't really about the graphics at all. The gameplay is slow, and I mean really slow. The thing with Star Wars Combine is, it's not the kind of game you constantly pay attention to. It's more of a background activity where you pop in on occasion, as all the movement and action happens in real time, meaning certain things like traveling takes a very, very long time to do, depending on the distance and method of transportation and so on. You want to walk from this tile to this tile? 5 minutes. This turn in combat? 18 minutes to resolve. Hyperspace travel to the other end of the galaxy? Come back in a month. So Star Wars Combine isn't exactly fast-paced, but it is, however, extremely detailed. You can choose one of many races that do exist in the Star Wars universe for your character, all with unique abilities like piloting, resistance to toxins, and of course, chances of being force sensitive. But if you for a second think this is the kind of game where you're handed a lightsaber and you go out and save the galaxy, you are dead wrong. This is the kind of game where you'll get beat up and dunked on if you are alone. You're not a cool Jedi, you're Andrus Telkantar, an absolute idiot with a pistol that somehow convinced another NPC to follow you, and here you are about to fight a 6-ton mudhorn alone with no experience. I promise things are really just going to go perfectly fine. So in Star Wars Combine, you're best off joining one of the factions as a new player. Freelancing is tough work and not often easily profitable, even if you survive long enough to actually count your credits. And there's also the fact that death is permanent in the game, meaning once you die, you are gone for good and have to start all over again. Pretty early in Star Wars Combine, you should decide which of the many factions to actually join. Certain factions may not actually like your race or current objective, meaning if you're a Jawa, good luck on joining the Galactic Empire outside of technical roles. Speaking of, choosing a faction can be hard. I mean, how about the Rebel Alliance, or the Techno Union, or how about the Pike Syndicate? Or how about Mandalore, or the Jedi Order itself, which you can only join if you're force sensitive, of which there's a very, very small chance of. Either way, none of this is fast. Things take a lot of time to do in Star Wars Combine. That being said, Star Wars Combine isn't really quest-based, unlike a lot of other MMOs. While it does have a few quests, there's actually not that many. Most of the content in Star Wars Combine comes from your interactions with factions, NPCs, production, mining, or research. Speaking of factions, me being an absolute idiot who happened to get dunked on by the first hostile NPC I came across, decided to then do the only cool thing I could, which was of course to join the Galactic Empire. And this turned out to be a whole ordeal of its own. Joining a faction in Star Wars Combine is about as complicated as the whole rest of the game. There was emails being sent back and forth with the recruiting officer, lots of long lists with rules and criteria, joining their website, yes, you heard that right, factions in Star Wars Combine often have their own website, which is super, super, super cool and not something you see every day. And then finally, I was able to attempt to join the Academy, which would then take another couple of weeks, of which I have not actually done yet. An interesting side note about the history of this game is where it came from. The thing is, Star Wars Combine is actually the continuation to a game that was called Star Wars Simulation, which was a game that existed between the mid-90s until the summer of '98, when the Game Master suddenly disappeared and took all game servers offline. The game community, being stranded, quite frankly, from the loss of Star Wars Simulation, created Star Wars Combine. I really just think the entire history of how this unique and interesting game came to be is really, really fascinating. If you're the kind of person who perhaps is able to enjoy a game like CDDA or Dwarf Fortress in its original format, you definitely also have a really good chance of having some fun with this game. And I think that's where I'm going to start wrapping up this fucking mess of a YouTube video. Again, I really don't want to present myself as any kind of expert on this topic. I'm really not doing the game justice of how cool and fascinating it really is. This game, it's just something I happen to come across and I really enjoy. And who knows, perhaps you're the kind of person who could enjoy this game too. Lastly, I want to thank everyone for having patience with me on video releases. I know they don't come quick. I got this bumpy since my last video, and if you want to, you can join my Discord where I rant about computer parts and making of YouTube videos and get insights into my video production. The link to that is going to be down below. Also, I'd really appreciate it if you gave this video a like, or perhaps comment some of your insight into Star Wars Combine or your experience with it. I do read every single comment, and I really, really appreciate it. And with that being said, have a good one.
more GPUs you buy, the more money you save. That's right. The more